Election reaction. President Donald Trump says he is optimistic that he will remain in the White House. We have a report and reaction. Fighting for the unborn. A closer look at the rising number of pro-life lawmakers on Capitol Hill. And never again. A report from Rome as the U.S. Embassy to the Holy See hosts an online event on fighting anti-Semitism. On EWTN News Nightly for Thursday, November 19th, 2020. Good evening. Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Tracy Sable. President Donald Trump's personal attorney, Rudy Giuliani, says he has the proof, the witnesses, and the evidence to show there was large-scale voter fraud in the 2020 presidential election. And President Donald Trump tweeted his support of those findings as a dramatic news conference unfolded this afternoon. White House correspondent Owen Jensen reports.
Before the news conference began today, President Donald Trump asserted on Twitter that it would show a very clear and viable path to victory.
Trump campaign attorney Rudy Giuliani made several claims while offering little in the way of concrete evidence. He alleged mass cheating went on in the election, pointing to a city employee in Detroit.
She was basically trained to cheat. She said that I was instructed by my supervisor to adjust the mailing date of these absentee ballot packages to be dated earlier than when they were actually sent in.
And in Pittsburgh and Philadelphia, the former New York City mayor claimed voter fraud occurred.
These people are under penalty of perjury. Their names are on an affidavit. They swear that they weren't allowed to carry out their function as inspectors. And it's not just a technical thing.
And the Trump campaign claims there were bad foreign actors who wanted President Donald Trump out.
This is the consummate foreign interference in our election in the most criminal way you can possibly imagine.
Attorney Sidney Powell even alleged altered software in voting machines.
This is stunning, heartbreaking, infuriating, and the most unpatriotic acts I can even imagine for people in this country to have participated in any way, shape, or form.
Still, despite these claims today, there's no evidence of widespread fraud. The Democratic National Committee earlier wrote a top security official at the Department of Homeland Security debunked Trump's baseless claims of voter fraud. The president fired that same official this week.
And as his legal team presented their case today, President Donald Trump said on Twitter an open and shut case of voter fraud, massive numbers. But Twitter said that claim is disputed. At the White House, Owen Jensen, EWTN News Nightly.
And joining me now on Skype is Tim Carney, senior political columnist for the Washington Examiner and resident fellow at the American Enterprise Institute. Tim, welcome back. Always good to see you. Let's talk about where we are right now. It's been a little over 2 weeks since Election Day. President Trump has not conceded, and his team continues to move forward with lawsuits regarding voter fraud. Meantime, presumptive President-elect Joe Biden is moving forward with his transition to the White House without cooperation from the White House on that transition. What are your thoughts on what we're seeing right now?
The central claim, I should say, is unfounded. There's no way that enough votes were moved by any computer program where they haven't laid out any of the evidence there, or by fraud, or by anything to flip any of these close states. And so what Donald Trump is trying to do, I don't actually know, because even the cases he's filing in court don't do enough to possibly overturn Georgia, Nevada, certainly not Pennsylvania, which was, and Michigan, over 100,000 votes. And so Donald Trump doesn't have any sort of normal path to victory, despite what he says. And so that means that Joe Biden on January 20th will be sworn in as president in all likelihood.
Tim, how much of this do you think, if at all, is about President Trump appealing to and maintaining his base? And what effects do you think this has or will have on voter confidence in the election system?
Well, what made Donald Trump appeal to so many voters, especially sort of conservatives who were sick of the Republican Party, is that he didn't roll over. He used to say all the time, "You show me a good loser, and I'll show you a loser." He does not believe in ever admitting that he lost, and that was part of his appeal to his voters. He's not going to change now. The problem is that if you can get a significant portion of the Republican Party to sort of try and actually overturn the election results when there's no evidence of widespread voter fraud or misconduct, then that means that we're going from a system where you have a rule of law and a rule of the majority to simply who has political power. And so that's what I would worry about in the future, is not just voter confidence in the system, but really the idea, do the people who have political power, whether it's a local canvassing board or a state legislature or the electors, are they going to say, well, I'm here to carry out the will of the people and the letter of the law, or will they say, I'm here to exercise political power? That's what I think could be undermined if this continues going.
As you know, Georgia runoff elections are now less than 2 months away, and a lot is at stake there. Do you think what's playing out right now, do you think it will have an impact on the race there?
I think it actually it harms the Republicans, because if the Republican Party just sort of admitted that Joe Biden is going to be the president and that Kamala Harris is going to be the vice president, you could have a very clear argument why David Perdue and Kelly Loeffler, the Republican incumbents, need to be reelected. And that argument would be, we need to make sure that Democrats don't control the Senate when they already control the House and the White House. You could make this argument along pro-life lines. You could make this argument along the lines of trying to oppose tax increases. You could make this argument saying you don't want the Democrats to have the ability to pack the court with a pro-choice majority by adding 2 new justices. If they admit, you know what, Kamala Harris is going to be the vice president and they will have a tie-breaking vote, Republicans need to win this seat, at least one of these seats in Georgia, in order to get to 51, that would actually strengthen their case with the voters in Georgia, where it looks like there's a slim majority that's Republican, even though there was a slim majority that voted for Joe Biden.
All right, Tim, we're going to leave it right there. Thank you so much for your time today. Tim Carney, senior political columnist for the Washington Examiner and resident fellow at the American Enterprise Institute. Thanks again, Tim.
Thank you.
Well, U.S. House Democrats unexpectedly lost at least 10 incumbent races in this month's election. But despite being in the minority, House Republicans are optimistic that they will have a say in policy in the next Congress, which will include a surge of pro-life women. Capitol Hill correspondent Eric Rosales reports. Eric?
Well, Tracy, Republican leader Kevin McCarthy believes that the GOP will win back majority of the House in the 2022 midterm elections, and they rightfully could after what we saw in the last election. But for now, it's going to be an uphill battle for the minority GOP party as Democrats continue to implement their party's agenda.
It's so exciting. We have a record number of pro-life women.
Congresswoman Kathy McMorris Rogers tells me incoming pro-life Republican congresswomen will be an important check on House Democrats' legislative priorities. After this month's elections, Democrats hold a slim majority over House Republicans. But in Georgia, one House seat flipped from red to blue. The Democratic House Speaker says those small gains helped her party keep the majority.
As I said, we've lost some battles, but we won the war. We have the gavel. We have the gavel.
In 2021, the agenda for House Democrats is to expand the Affordable Care Act, pass a transportation and infrastructure bill, and repeal the pro-life Hyde Amendment.
Let me be clear. We will fight to remove the Hyde Amendment to ensure that women of color and all women have access to the reproductive health that they deserve.
The Hyde Amendment was put in place decades ago that says no taxpayer funding of abortion.
Today, the GOP leader tells me it shows that the Democratic Party won't tolerate different views.
Should you spend taxpayer money for this? I mean, that's been clear for a number of years. That's something that even Joe Biden had voted for in the past.
As a co-founder of the Congressional Down Syndrome Caucus, Congresswoman McMorris Rogers tells me Republicans will continue working to protect life. And she says we all need to keep praying.
Part of my prayer right now is that God will give us tender and responsive hearts to the things of the Lord. And I think when it comes to life, celebrating life is having that tender and responsive heart.
Congresswoman McMorris Rodgers tells me that she's looking forward to welcoming a lot more women into the House after this party, after this race, and she says that they will continue to work on legislation to protect the unborn. She is also praying for not just Democrats, but also all Americans to soften their hearts so that they will protect the unborn. Tracy?
Okay, thank you so much, Eric. Correspondent Eric Rosales reporting from Capitol Hill tonight. Catherine Hadro, host and managing editor of EWTN Pro-Life Weekly, joins me now on Skype. Catherine, thanks so much for coming on. Always great to get your perspective. So what's your reaction to this wave of pro-life women winning election to the U.S. House?
Hi, Tracy. This is significant and it's exciting. We now have 17 new pro-life women who have been elected to the U.S. House of Representatives. And in at least 8 of those races, those pro-life women flip the seats in their districts. This is what I think it tells us. Americans are largely rejecting the extreme abortion message that we're seeing within the Democratic Party. And it's not isolated to just one region. We saw these wins across the U.S. map, in California, to Oklahoma, to New York. It is a massive repudiation of the lie that to be pro-woman, you have to be pro-abortion. That is not the truth. And we now have 17 new pro-life women who can be ambassadors for the truth on life in Capitol Hill.
Yeah, it is incredible. As we know, Democrats still have control of the House. What political that is, consequences will these wins hold?
As you said, Democrats do still hold a majority in the House of Representatives, and Eric said it right. It's only a thin majority right now, though. And so it's an open secret. Democrats are grappling and debating about what went wrong for them this election day. And I think they'd be smart to realize they cannot politically afford to advance extreme abortion legislation when they've been handed this pro-life mandate from the American people based on all these pro-life wins in the House of Representatives. But Tracy, as you and Tim Carney were just speaking about the other minute, all eyes really are on the Senate right now and those 2 runoff elections when it comes to defending life at the congressional level, because whoever wins those 2 races, that determines who holds a majority in the Senate. And if Democrats win, there would not be that check on House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's abortion agenda. Senator Steve Daines, who chairs the Senate Pro-Life Caucus, told it to me this way: we've got to get the pro-life voters out in Georgia because life is on the ballot.
Indeed. Well, Catherine, as you know, this week marked the fall meeting of the U.S. Bishops' Conference. What have we heard from the U.S. bishops on life since Election Day?
That's absolutely right. This week was the largest annual gathering of the U.S. bishops. They met virtually. And Tracy, it was in closing remarks during the public session that the president of the U.S. bishops, Archbishop Jose Gomez of Los Angeles, spoke clearly on President-elect Joe Biden and his support for abortion. Gomez expressed concern that Biden, who is Catholic, said he wants to repeal the Hyde Amendment and to preserve Roe v. Wade. Gomez says that this undermines the bishop's preeminent priority to eliminate abortion in the United States, and it confuses faithful Catholics about what the church actually teaches on life. So, Tracy, just this week, those comments from the president of the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops might mark the beginning of a contentious relationship between a projected Biden-Harris administration and the U.S. bishops.
Well, Catherine, before we let you go, any final thoughts?
You know, Tracy, I think we're all just kind of holding our breath and waiting to see what happens in Georgia. That really will be huge there. We're going to see a lot of coverage, a lot of attention there. And I think we just have to, be patient and see what happens. It's hard to kind of predict what 2021 is going to bring when it comes to the pro-life strategy until we see who holds a majority in the Senate and when this election gets clarified and we see who's inaugurated in January.
Well, Catherine, always great to have you on. Thank you so much. And a reminder that you can watch EWTN Pro-Life Weekly Thursdays at 10 p.m. So make sure you tune in right here. And for other airing times, visit EWTN.com. Coming up, why the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops is asking for a halt to all federal executions. U.S. bishops continue to call on the Trump administration to stop federal executions, with one execution scheduled for today and more in the coming weeks. Two chairmen with the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops are the latest to speak out. Correspondent Mark Irons reports.
Tracy, two U.S. archbishops are saying the death penalty is not necessary to protect society, and they're calling on the Trump administration to act as a witness to the dignity of all human life. I spoke with one of them today, Archbishop Paul Coakley of Oklahoma City.
The church's witness really shines forth, that this is how much we believe in the sanctity of life, that a person doesn't forfeit their human dignity, even when they've committed a terrible crime.
Archbishop Coakley says it is disappointing that Catholic Attorney General William Barr last year directed executions to resume after a nearly two-decade lapse in the use of the federal death penalty. The Archbishop joined the chairman of the USCCB's Committee on Pro-Life Activities this week, releasing a statement asking President Trump and the Attorney General to stop executions. Archbishop Coakley tells me he sees a clear case of the development of doctrine regarding the church stance on the death penalty. Pope Francis has called the death penalty a rejection of the gospel and of human dignity. In 2018, the Catholic Church Catechism was revised to describe the death penalty as inadmissible. Tracy?
Correspondent Mark Irons reporting for us tonight. Thank you so much, Mark. A bishop in California is responding to a probe into his handling of abuse cases. In a statement, Bishop Oscar Cantu says Tuesday, Catholic news agency published an article about a possible Vatican investigation into the handling of clerical misconduct during my time as Bishop of the Diocese of Las Cruces. I support the Vos Estis protocols to ensure the accountability of bishops and to bring justice and healing to victims, survivors, and I intend to cooperate fully with any inquiry. Up next, Vatican officials are joining the U.S. ambassador to the Holy See to fight anti-Semitism. U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo visits Jerusalem and says the BDS movement, the Boycott, Divest, and Sanction Israel movement, is anti-Semitic.
We will regard the global anti-Israel BDS campaign as anti-Semitic. We will immediately take steps to identify organizations that engage in hateful BDS conduct and withdraw U.S. government support for such groups.
After meeting Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, Secretary Pompeo became the first American Secretary of State to visit a Jewish settlement in the occupied West Bank. He also tweeted that he was honored to visit the spot where Jesus was baptized. An advisor to Iran's supreme leader is warning that any attack by the U.S. could set off a full-scale war in the Middle East. Hussein Dahad is a possible candidate in Iran's presidential elections next year. He also says reconstruction of a nuclear site continues after satellite photos showed new construction there. The head of the Orthodox Church of Greece is in the hospital with COVID-19. Archbishop Euronymos is 82 years old. The Archdiocese says he has mild symptoms. Pope Francis urges church leaders in Latin America to work with government officials to help those most affected by the coronavirus pandemic.
Y la organización social se basa en contribuir, compartir.
In a video message as part of a seminar on COVID-19 in Latin America, the Holy Father said the pandemic has highlighted the plight of the most needy, and he asked the faithful to show love and compassion to them and to help everyone to find dignity in their life. Officials in the United States say they are committed to fighting discrimination against the global Jewish community, and they're receiving help from Catholic leaders. Earlier today, the U.S. Embassy to the Holy See hosted an online event on confronting the global rise of anti-Semitism. The Vatican Secretary of State, Cardinal Pietro Parolin, joined the virtual event along with other government officials and Jewish leaders. Joining us now is Alon Carr, U.S. Special Envoy to monitor and combat anti-Semitism. He participated in the U.S. Embassy to the Holy See symposium today. Special Envoy Carr, thank you so much for coming on. We appreciate your time. So tell us, why did the U.S. Embassy to the Holy See hold this meeting today, and how did it go?
Well, thank you, Tracy, for having me. It's a pleasure to be with you. Ambassador Gingrich and her leadership team at our embassy to the Holy See felt it was extremely important to hold this conference now. Anti-Semitism has been rising for over a decade now, and the Catholic Church has such an important role to play, not only in combating anti-Semitism, but then proactively to turn the tables in recapturing our Judeo-Christian values and more broadly our Abrahamic values that underpin our civilizations in every country that we're in. And so this is an incredibly important time because anti-Semitism isn't only a threat to the Jewish people. Anti-Semitism is a pernicious, destructive force that threatens us all. That's why President Trump calls it the vile poison of anti-Semitism. Indeed, it is a vile poison, and all of us have to unite in combating it.
Absolutely. What are some of the solutions to combat that hate, not only towards the Jewish community, but also people of all faiths?
Well, a number of initiatives we're working on is, first of all, to ensure that Jewish communities around the world are protected. Safety is a primary concern. And so we work with our allies to ensure that sufficient resources are devoted to protecting them. We work on hate crimes prosecutions because it's so important that law enforcement authorities make that statement that a crime committed with hate as a motive is worse than a crime committed for other purposes. The IRA definition, this is critically important. There is an international definition of anti-Semitism. And, you know, if you want to effectively confront a threat, you've got to define it first. We have a vehicle for doing that. And that's the IRA definition. One of my top diplomatic asks, if a country hasn't adopted it, is that they adopt it. We're working on the internet because whether the anti-Semitism comes from the far right, the far left, or militant Islam, all of these ideological camps are using the internet and social media to recruit adherents and to drive their venomous ideologies with unprecedented speed and with global reach. This is a critical point. And then a last issue that we're focusing on that's so important is, in addition to defending against anti-Semitism, we have to go on the offense. Well, how do you do that? You do that by teaching and educating in philo-Semitism, inculcating an understanding of and an appreciation of the Jewish people, of Jewish history, and of the values of Judaism that are fundamental and underpin our civilizations. That's really how you go on the offense. If we do all of these together, I have no doubt that we'll be able to roll back the scourge of rising anti-Semitism in the world.
Well, we appreciate you coming on and all the good work that you do. Thank you so much. Alon Carr, U.S. Special Envoy to monitor and combat anti-Semitism. Thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
And finally tonight, more than 2,000 young people from around the world gather online to talk about the future of the economy in the midst of a pandemic. Economy of Francesco is a 4-day event inspired by Pope Francis. He invited young people, economists, and entrepreneurs to come together and discuss an economy that is inclusive, sustainable, and humane. It was originally scheduled to take place in Assisi, a city known for its peace. We thank you for watching tonight. For the entire EWTN News Nightly team, I'm Tracy Sable. Good night and God bless.